All right, we are back on this Tuesday. Hope you're doing well out there. Thanks for hanging out with us. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Derek Gunn, Barrett Brooks, Rob Ellis. By the way, if you miss any of our interviews, you go to jakibsports.com. You can check them out in their entirety, and also go to JAKIB Sports YouTube Network as well. But we had great show yesterday. We had Tom McCarthy, Greg Murphy on today. Of course, Zach Berman in a moment. Mark Jackson will be joining us as well. A little later, Tom Giordano from Pondla Hockey will tell you how you can win tickets to games, either games 3, 4, or 5 of the World Series. All right, joining us now does a phenomenal job covering the Eagles and the NFL for The Athletic, and you can follow him on Twitter as well, at ZBerm, the one and only Zach Berman. Zach, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Jack, I got to start with your Phillies thoughts, man. I know you're a Philadelphian. I know you're excited. And before we get to the Birds, they going to take care of business here against Houston?
Houston's tough, right? I mean, we've seen that these past 2 series. That bullpen's playing really well, but the Phillies are built for the postseason, and that was the, I don't want to say the saving grace, but the reason for optimism, if you will, during the final 2 months of the season. That if they just got in, postseason baseball is fundamentally different than regular season baseball. If you have a top heavy rotation, if you have power bats, you can win games, and we've obviously seen that here. So I wouldn't pick against the Phillies with the way they're playing right now. It's going to be a tough series, but I wouldn't pick against the Phillies.
Zach, any chance you may stay a little bit and you may hang out on Friday night in Houston if there's a game 6 there?
You know, it's funny you asked that. I had that conversation with my wife when the schedule came out, and yes, if the Phillies are in Game 6, right,
putting your life in jeopardy, man.
Then I'll look to push that flight back, and it's probably easier to get tickets down in Houston than it is in Philly.
There you go, smart man. I like the way you're thinking, Zach. Good work.
Yeah, Zach is so professional. Even on his off day, he wears a button-down shirt. When was the last time any of us wore a button-down shirt?
He's
on
not like
show?
us slobs. That's
I know.
sure.
I know. He is a consummate professional.
Man.
Well, let's clarify off day. I'm not at the facility, but I'm still working, right? So,
Gunner, what are you trying to say, Derek?
For full disclosure, I threw this on for the podcast. I was in a hoodie before, so I wanted to
lie to us, Zach. Make us feel better, man.
Forgive me for a man who told me point blank, I would, if I could, I would sleep at the NovaCare complex 7 days a week. Forgive me for underestimating your diligence and your dedication to the game.
I would. I don't think Dom wants me to sleep there, but I would. Yeah.
That's crazy, man. He believes that too seriously, man. I can remember back in the day we used to have him on Breakfast on Broad. He said, "Man, I eat, sleep, and breathe this." I said, "Well, I may just eat it, but I'm not sleeping. I'm taking him out the bed, bro." But yeah, man, this is a great day in Philly sports. Period, man. Everything that's going on, you know, even the Flyers are playing well, but man, just let's get it back to what we're talking about. Let's go back to the Eagles. At this point, man, I think they did a lot of self-evaluation, and I really think that you're going to see a drastic improvement in the D-line's production after this ball.
Potentially. I actually think the D-line has been playing decently. Now, the sack production has fluctuated game to game. I think some of that has to do with the offenses they've played. I'm really not so worried about the defensive line right now, but I am curious to see how they come out of the bye. I think there are certain things in particular that they're looking at, and it's not so much making major changes, and they're undefeated. You don't have to, but it's more looking at tendencies, and you know this, Barrett. They look at to see if there's certain tells for the offense, the defense, and try to rectify those. So that's what I would be paying attention to.
Hey, Zach, just to add to what Barrett said, here's what I've said about the D-line. I've said I don't think this D-line, for as much money that is invested in this D-line, is good enough by itself to get consistent pressure on a quarterback. It padded its stats against a Washington team that us four could have at least gotten one sack between us against.
Well, maybe the three of you, not me. But
Well, you could have come on a delayed blitz.
We're pushing it with me too.
Sure.
Delayed blitz, you might have got home. You know, because
there you go.
Carson's holding the ball 8 seconds back there. He would have given us a shot. But I've said they're coming out of this bye, and they're going to play two offensive lines that have issues, both Pittsburgh and Houston, and we're going to applaud their efforts for doing a lot of good things against those teams. But I see too many inconsistencies with just their front four. In terms, when you have that kind of money invested in a front four, I think they need to give you more on a consistent basis, and I haven't seen it. I'm not saying I'm worried about it. It's just that I'm not completely happy with what I've seen from that production by itself up to this point.
From a sack perspective, you mean?
A sack perspective, getting enough consistent pressure on the quarterback as well.
No, look, I hear what you're saying. I frankly think more of the issue, if you want to call it that, is that they're a different defense when they're in a 5-man front compared to a 4-man front.
Right.
And I think opposing offensive coordinators feel like they can run against the Eagles when they're in the 4-man front. And so that changes the way that they're playing. And you saw that against the Cowboys, by the way, right? When they were in that 4-man front and they're nursing the lead, the Cowboys weren't afraid to run on them. Right. And you don't usually see teams do that in the second half of games. And by the way, I saw that a bit from the Cardinals too. Structurally, they were playing a certain way to account for Kyler Murray's legs. And then when they're protecting a lead, they play a little differently there. I think that what I'm paying more attention to is not can you get more pass rush production, because I actually think the pass rush is holding up decently. My bigger question is the split between the odd man front and the even man front, and the way teams play you with those fronts.
Okay.
Right. When you look at it,
what would you say on a positive note has been your biggest surprise through 6 games with them?
Well, Jalen Hurts. I mean, I thought Jalen Hurts was going to improve because he's improved every year he's played football that I've been following him, right? I mean, I can't account for his Channel View high school days, but from Alabama to his second year at Alabama to Oklahoma to his rookie year in the NFL, he's improved every year. The jump he's made this year, I didn't see that coming. And it's a credit to Jalen. It's a credit to this coaching staff. And certainly there are factors in place that have contributed to it. Having A.J. Brown in that offense helps. Obviously, he's talked quite a bit about back-to-back years in the same scheme. But the big thing for me is Jalen he's making good decisions. He's making good passes. And they're winning games because of Jalen Hurts. So I thought Jalen was going to improve. I didn't think he was going to play this well, and it's a credit to him.
Looking at the way he's played, the way this offense is run, you see Shane really being able to mix things up a little bit. But I've seen the past 2 games, he's kind of gotten away from the run a little bit, towards the third quarter, going to the fourth quarter. And then all of a sudden, when he has to turn it on, he gets back to it. Why do you think they don't do a lot of what they've done in the first half in that third quarter?
All right, so that's a fair question. I'm thinking back. They obviously had that long drive against Arizona in the fourth quarter, the long drive against Dallas in the fourth quarter. Both those drives, they committed to the run almost entirely until late in the drives. I don't think it's a matter of a lack of commitment to the run. I'm thinking, for instance, the Dallas game, I believe they had a costly penalty there that pushed them back. There are a handful of factors. They haven't been able to sustain drives well enough in the third quarter. I would agree with you there. But I don't think it's a drastic problem in terms of run pass. And by the way, I mean, you can look at this team and say they need to pass the ball, that they need to pass the ball more. When you look at their passing efficiency, when you look at getting the ball to A.J. Brown, different things they could do, they could pass the ball more. But the third quarters they need to play better in the third quarters coming out of half. There's no question about it. I don't think it's a run pass question though.
Hey Zach, have you heard any updates? I know it's a bye week. Any updates on the status of Lane Johnson, John Dickerson, and so on and so forth, with the little nicks and aches that they've had up to this point in terms of getting ready for Sunday?
So they're back on the practice field tomorrow. I heard last week Lane Johnson was doing better.
Okay.
That's obviously out of the team's hands. That's the league mandated concussion protocol. So we'll have a better sense. We're on the practice field tomorrow. Landon Dickerson's been playing through it. And I don't, he finished that game against Dallas. So I would imagine the bye week was beneficial for him. Landon's obviously the big one to monitor. I'm sorry, Lane's the big one to monitor at this point. And I hesitate to give timelines on concussions because as Rick Burkholder, the former Eagles trainer, once said, if you've seen one of them, you've seen one of them, right? and that's so. But if Lane is if he's progressing through the protocol, that's a major benefit for the Eagles.
Zach, we're not all that far away. Geez, what's the less than a week from the trade deadline? Actually, is it a week? It might be a week today. Anyway, we're right up against it. There have been rumors that they were interested potentially in McCaffrey. Do you see them making a move? And if so, what position would you like to, strengthen?
So at the top of the show here, at the top of my segment, I should say, D-Gun mentioned the pass rush. You can never have too many edge rushers, and that's a short-term and long-term thing to look at too. So if there's a pass rusher you can get to help you in the short term, like say Robert Quinn from Chicago, although Chicago's winning games, right?
Yeah, right.
But someone like that, I think that can really be beneficial for your pass rush. I think that I look at potentially a pass blocking running back or someone to help in the backfield. And you're not going to have to spend much for that. James Robinson just went for a 6th round pick, right? So the cost is usually low for a running back. You won't have to pay what you paid for Jay Ajayi in 2017. But I think when you look at their blitz pickup, they can improve in that area from the running back perspective. So I would look there. I think safety depth is something to watch. If Epps goes down or Gardner Johnson goes down, then it obviously, I think there's a drop off there at the position, number one, and you can do certain things with 3 safety packages if there's another safety you would like to play. I know it's been written out there or discussed about a backup tight end because they do like to play 12 personnel. One thing to monitor there is Tyree Jackson is returning from the ACL. He's still on the PUP list. But if he can be back, if he can come back, that's someone who could potentially help them in the passing game. But I would really look at edge rusher. I would look at running back, and I would look at backup safety.
Zach, I'm fascinated that you brought up the running back situation, because when you look at the primary 3-headed monster of this Eagles backfield, and then you toss in Trey Sermon as well. If they did address the running back situation, who would be the odd man or odd men out?
It's a good question, and that's the type of conversation that they need to have. If you add this person, are you willing to cut Trey Sermon? Do you think you can sneak him to the practice squad? That it's a fair question, and that's the other part of every trade. When there's not an injury, when there's not that clear open spot on the roster, that's something to look at. Now, I do think though that you need to look at your backfield overall and say teams are looking at the Eagles. This is a hard offense to stop. If they're going to send blitzes because that's what's worked against. That's what worked against Arizona, worked to an extent against Detroit. And if it's a simple math thing, right? If you can't beat this offensive line in one-on-ones, then if you can get one more pass rusher than they have blocker, then it gives you an advantage. And in that case, the Eagles need to have a running back who can pick up the blitz. And that's an area where they do need to improve. So, yeah, so but it's a hard skill to find, right? There are a lot of running backs don't specialize in blitz pickup. And when you have one, you appreciate them. Yeah, I don't know who they would cut to open up the roster spot, but that is a spot where they can upgrade.
Zach, you buying the Giants at 6-1 here?
Well, it's hard to stumble into 6 wins in your first 7 games. Yeah. So I give them credit. Am I buying them as a contender? No, I'm not. I've watched a decent amount of their games, and where I give them a lot of credit is situational football, because that I don't think gets enough discussion when talking about a good team. We look at the roster, you look at the quarterback, how well do you play on third downs? How well do you play in the red zone? How well do you play at end of quarter and end of half situations? or I shouldn't say end of quarter, end of half situations and end of game situations. Those are all factors in the winning, and the Giants are doing that well right now. But from a talent perspective, no, I'm not buying them being an NFC contender. But I've also seen in this league that when you get some momentum and your guys start to believe, that goes a long way. And the other part is, and Eagles fans know this right now, there aren't that many good teams in the NFC, right?
NFL.
I think the Chiefs and the Bills are really good.
Yeah. Yep.
And then,
that's it.
But in the NFC, it's hard to come up with, with your playoff teams, right? I mean, someone has to win the NFC South, and I don't know who that's, so, and the same thing the Vikings are good in the NFC North, but there's a lot of teams that we thought were going to be top of the conference teams, whether it's the Bucs, the Rams, the Packers, and they haven't played to that level. So I'm not buying the Giants in terms of being contenders, but like I said, you don't stumble into winning 6 or 7 games. You have to be doing the right things for that to occur.
Zach, how surprised are you that across the league, outside of the 3 teams we just mentioned, that the NFL is so mediocre this year?
Very, because I'm look, this isn't like a controversial take. I tend to think that if you have any elite quarterback, you're going to be in the mix at the end. So it surprises me to see teams like the Bucs and the Packers, the Rams to an extent, have the record that they have right now. It seems every week I pick the Packers because they have Aaron Rodgers, and I'm sorry, Gunnar, it hasn't worked out that way.
No, I'm not surprised one bit.
And then the Bucs, that's a team that, in addition to Tom Brady, has had so much talent. It shows you the importance of line play. Those offensive line injuries have really affected them. The injuries that they've had at wide receiver have affected them. That said, if those teams can just get in, you don't want to see Aaron Rodgers in January. You don't want to see Tom Brady in January. And that's what I keep going back to is I talked about playoff baseball earlier. Playoff football is not that much different than regular season. But what is different is it's one game. And when you have the better quarterback in that game, that makes a huge difference. So if you're an Eagles fan, which I imagine everyone watching this is, you don't want to see Brady or Rodgers in January.
No question about that, But do you think it's more so about the coaching as opposed to being the way, these teams with the talent comes? I mean, you look at there's teams that are great talent on them, but they're just not playing up to their capabilities. So I tend to, try to equate them to coaching. What happened to, the Rams as far as coaching and, teams like that? They're just not in a position to be great. What is it? What do you think it is?
I actually don't think it's coaching. I think it's more personnel related, right? Mm-hmm. Like I don't think Sean McVay became a worse coach overnight. Okay. But I think that when not we, the 4 of us, but let's say the general perception of teams does not often pay enough attention to the quality of the offensive line.
Yes, that's definitely. Yep.
And that's why last year when there was talk about the Eagles being in a rebuilding year, they had questions at wide receiver, they had questions at quarterback going into the season, obviously questions on defense. I said when they have the offensive line that they have, they're going to be in games. And you saw that late in the year, right? The offensive line took over. What you're seeing now in Tampa Bay and Los Angeles in particular is the offensive line play is not it's not where it needs to be, and that affects everything else. Green Bay, they lost Devontae Adams, and they thought they could replace him with second round pick and a 4th round pick, and that hasn't worked out. But even still, they've had injuries on their offensive line. Mm-hmm. They've had a lot of moving pieces, and so I go back to offensive line play. I think that is such a big difference, and that's why some of these teams that are supposed to be heavyweights are struggling. And in the Bucs case, it wasn't for a lack of planning. I mean, they've lost some key pieces on that line. In the Rams case, I think it's been a money crunch, and you lose Andrew Whitworth at left tackle.
Huge.
That's had a major effect on them.
Yep.
Zach, you've had about a year and a half to soak in Nick Sirianni. Just give me your overall assessments here. Whether, and I don't just mean, hey, they're 6-0 this year. I mean just kind of what your sense is of where this is headed with him and the way the players respond, game day, etc.
Yeah, I give Nick so much credit because you used the word how the players respond. Well, that locker room is behind Nick Sirianni, and there's things that he said and things that he's done that in the beginning were kind of criticized for, that's like what a high school coach does or a college coach does. But I'll tell you what, this is a close locker room that believes in Sirianni. And number one, number two, he knows I think he's put a good coaching staff together. Number one, and what I respect about this coaching staff is they've built matchup offenses and matchup defenses, right? So there's some teams that are on, they're like offensive drivers as opposed to defensive drivers. And what I mean by that is they're going to say, this is what we do on offense. This is what we do on defense. You try to stop us on both sides. The Eagles, that's not really the way they operate. What they do is they say, all right, this is who you have on defense. This is who you have on offense. How can we build our game plan this week to play against that group? And that's why you see some weeks when they're throwing it 30 times, and you see some weeks when they're run heavy, and you see some weeks when it's screen heavy, and some weeks when they challenge you downfield. And defensively, you see some weeks when they're blitzing, and some weeks when they're playing more softer coverage, if you will. So much is predicated. They talk about flexibility and versatility, and they're not the only team in the league that does it. But I think they've done it really well, and that starts with Sirianni's approach.
Hey, Zach, while we're giving credit where credit is due, let's go to Shane Steichen. And I've said a couple of weeks ago, and I continue to stand by that until further notice, the way he has called games and kept defenses off balance, I think when it's all said and done at the end of this year, if this continues to be the trend, he will be more of a head coaching candidate than Jonathan Gannon in a lot of ways, because everybody's looking for that next great offensive mind to be their head coach.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Steichen's done a good job this year in terms of calling plays, knowing the rhythm of plays, tailoring the system to his quarterback. This ties into the previous answer. Nick Sirianni, he talks often about his college coach saying players, not plays, right? And then it's players, formations, plays. And we pay so much attention sometimes to a coach or a coordinator coming in with a scheme. And I give more credit to a staff and to a coach who adjusts to the personnel that they have, right? And Shane Steichen's done a really good job calling plays to Jalen Hurts' strength, making it work with the quarterback and the system that he has. And you call a different offense when Jalen Hurts is your quarterback than when Philip Rivers is your quarterback. That's the reality of it. And he's done a good job adjusting to that. And the same thing. It starts at the top with Nick Sirianni, and I've seen too many coaches who think that the system is the star, right? And what this coaching staff does well is they build it and they feature around the players that they have.
Zach, how about acquisitions they've made? To me, there's been a lot that have really helped them, but man, Bradbury has blown me away at the level in which he's playing.
Yeah, this is like the 2017 offseason in the sense that Howie's made it, the decisions Howie Roseman has made have worked really well. He's struck gold on so many of these, and it's different than 2017. In 2017, they took some lottery ticket signings that worked out better than they even thought. Chris Long and Patrick Robinson, when they signed those guys on that day in late March, they didn't expect them to have the contributions that they did. The difference this year is these were more bigger ticket signings. James Bradbury, Kaiser White, these guys were signed to start for them. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was traded to start for them. Hassan Reddick's a different category. A.J. Brown's a different category. But the guys they're paying big money to, in particular, A.J. and Hassan, they're playing like big money acquisitions. But you mentioned Bradbury. You mentioned, I mentioned Kaiser White. They were strategic with the timing of it. They were strategic in terms of what they were looking for. And Bradbury in particular has made a major the jump from Steve Nelson to James Bradbury, and this is no disrespect to Steve Nelson, but that's changed the way Gannon's able to call defense, and it's changed the way this defense has looked.
No, absolutely. You know, we talk about Bradbury. Bradbury at this point has allowed them to not blitz because of how good he is. And they took a minute. They really took a shot in the dark will get him because he didn't play this well last year. But the team as a whole with the Giants didn't play well last year. Looking at Bradbury, looking at that secondary, do you think Gannon will start to blitz more after self-evaluating what went on the first 6 games, especially the last game where they didn't get a sack? Do you think they'll start blitzing more? Do you think they'll stay with the same, because they're winning, they're 6-0, so they're winning. Do you think he sticks with the same scheme that he's been doing?
I'm not the question, but I really mean this. It depends on the quarterback, depends on the offensive line. There are going to be certain quarterbacks where they're going to throw heavy blitzes at them, right?
Right.
I mean, I could see Kenny Pickett this weekend being one of those quarterbacks that they do it against. There are going to be some quarterbacks where they're going to say, we're going to play off you here. We're going to try to win. And the offensive line too, not just the quarterback, right? But we don't want you to run free, number one. And, we're going to try to get in with our 4 or our 5. And you're going to have to throw the ball well on 10, 12 plays to beat us. Excuse me. So it's really a matchup dependent situation.
All right, Zach. Well, listen, we'll let you go, man. Get yourself a good drink. There you go, brother. You'll be good. I know Gunner will do that to you, man. He will do that.
Yeah. Okay.
We understand. Yeah.
It's always Gunner, man. He's always doing something. Man.
That's all right. I got broad shoulders. I got broad shoulders, baby.
I kid because I love Zach. So we'll check out your work, of course. The Athletic. Give us the name of the podcast so everybody can take a listen as well.
Yeah, Birds with Friends. It's Bo Wolf, Marissa. I was about to say Marissa Morris, Marissa Dunn now, and me, and it's 3 days a week. We'll be on this afternoon.
Awesome.
Make sure to check us out.
All right, we'll do. Zach, thanks for the time, man. Always great chatting with you, man. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, let's get a quickie here, guys. We got Mark Jackson on the other side. We'll keep it rolling. We'll go back to the Eagles in a little bit. We'll talk some Sixers with Mark when we return. Derek Gunn, Barrett Brooks, Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Let's talk Pro Action Restoration. Yes, Pro Action Restoration is the place that you call if your home, your business, or your property has gone through the inconvenience of water, fire, smoke, mold damage, you name it. They're on call 24 hours, 7 days a week. I've gone through it, called them on a Saturday. They got right over, cleaned the place up. Crew was professional, clean. The price was reasonable. They're also licensed, bonded, fully insured. They've been serving the tri-state area for more than 2 decades. Pro Action will work in conjunction. Yes, they will, with your insurance company. Whether it's water, fire, smoke, mold remediation, you name it, they can handle it. Give them a call, 610-623-3760. 610-623-3760 or online at proactionrestoration.com. That's proactionrestoration.com.